You are listening to Essence, a podcast about story, journey, and self. Hello everyone, welcome to episode 4 of Essence, a podcast about journey, story, and self. As I put this together, the interview that you're about to hear, I actually recorded about 6 weeks ago now. You'll notice that over the next couple of months, many of the recordings that I'm going to be putting up will have been recorded around the same time. And I want to make a point about right now because we've entered a phase of the pandemic where various different people around the world are now getting the vaccine, either Moderna or Pfizer or some of the others. Things are starting to look to be opening up again in the near future, hopefully. And it's around a year since at least North America went into lockdown. And this particular conversation and the practitioner I'm talking with today really resonates with kind of what was happening this time last year. This time last year, we were just entering the second or third week of lockdown, at least in Canada here. We weren't sure kind of when this would lift. Certainly a lot of hoarding had taken place, a lot of people going out and panic buying. And people were starting to see deaths in the media. The way that the pandemic had hit us, weddings and births and funerals had already been scheduled, and then suddenly we started to realize the true horror of what was taking place, and that funerals would not be taking place, that people would be dying perhaps alone, people would be dying outside of even the touch of humanity that we have really taken for granted. I feel like we've really taken that for granted all these years. And so the pandemic not only caused us to isolate in life, but in many ways in death there was an isolation until we began to realize alternative ways of coming together as community, until people had become educated or had, well, certainly downloaded, social media apps like Zoom, like Google Hangouts, people becoming connected through this virtual realm that has now, after more than a year, become quite natural for many of us. But this time last year, we were not at that place yet. And this brings us to this conversation that I had with Clint Ourin Burn, who is a fabulous spiritual practitioner from the UK. He's based out of Northampton in England, and he is also a member of the Order of Bards, Ovates Druids. He also is a practicing witch, and is very connected with other forms of druidry and other magical practices. And what Clint did was he saw a need that needed to be filled, that needed to be served. Clint is about to talk about the idea of service, the importance of service in his practice, and what that led Clint to do while he was connecting with his local community was to reach out and connect with a much broader community. That's how I became aware of his work. He started posting things onto other Facebook groups from his main page, and he also started a monthly memorial service online, a ritual of memorial for the pagan and for the general community. Anybody was welcome to come and remember not only those who were dying of COVID, but also those who we would normally memorialize in person. We would normally get together and have services together. And of course that was not possible. And he talks about the genesis of this, in our chat today, and he talks about the impact that had on him as an individual, and continuing on. Now, what's funny is originally I had recorded another conversation with him a week before, and that week was during Mercury retrograde, and unfortunately what happened was we had this beautiful, it was an hour-long conversation. It was an incredible, really beautiful. And then when we finished it, I looked, and for some odd reason, Zoom had decided not to record a single word of it. So what you're about to hear is a very comfortable conversation with Clint Ourin Burn. And without further ado, let's dive right in.
Hello, welcome to the show. I'd like to welcome my guest today, who is Clint Ourin Burn, a fabulous spiritual practitioner from the UK, and fabulous, yes, fabulous.
Nice.
Clint's work, I came across Clint's work about 7 months ago, and it started popping up on quite a few of the Facebook groups I was involved with. And Clint is first of all, a member of the Order of Bards, Ovates and Druids. He's also a member of another Druid organization based in North America called ADF, nDraíocht Féin, I believe. Probably butchered that.
Yeah, you'll say it better than me anyway.
And you also run a local OBOD grove in your area in Northamptonshire in the UK called the Goddess Grove, and that's where your videos and most of your work has been appearing.
Yep.
So, welcome to the show, Clint.
Thanks. It's nice to be here. Always nice.
We so some transparency here. We had actually had an interview last week, and or the week before this. This interview had been recorded, and throughout it, apparently, it was Mercury retrograde, and I did not hit record. So we had a full 50-minute wonderful conversation. I really enjoyed it.
Lovely.
And it was just a practice run. So today we will be diving a little bit deeper, and maybe that will be more benefit for anybody who's watching this. So Clint,
I think it's good. We just take that as a test run, like a baptism of fire, and move forward.
That's exactly it, right? That's exactly it. And since we don't have anywhere to go right now, then, it's a good thing to have a test run, right? You said something interesting afterwards, and
exactly.
I think maybe we can start with that. You said it was really nice to have a chat with somebody without being in the place of teacher. A lot of what you've been doing online has been in the place of teaching. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about how you got to the place of teacher. Tell us about your spiritual journey, and we can talk more about what being a teacher is like for you, both its downsides and its pluses. How did you start getting involved in your spiritual practices?
Okay, so from the very beginning, it's I must have been if we start right at the beginning, I must have been 14, 15. It was it was kind of like growing up with a Christian background, a Christian family, and then the family kind of split up, which is fair enough. It happens a lot, not a big deal. But my dad was very much, he would encourage the expression of fairy tales and stories. And I was obsessed with fairy tales and stories growing up, and bought this really naff book when I was 14, 15, called Practical Magic or something like that. Anyway, but it was naff. It was mostly pictures and a little bit of writing. It was, those sorts of books, like the Crystal Bible that you'd find now. So it was pretty much that. I never used anything in it, but it was there, and I thumbed through it constantly. Pretty much memorized the entire thing. But I kind of did that. Dipped into all sorts of things. Dipped in and out of Wicca. Dipped in and out of traditional witchcraft. Read books with friends, things like Silver Ravenwolf, Scott Cunningham. I actually didn't get introduced to Gerald Gardner and people like that until I was at least 25, 26. So it's for a good period of time, it was Wicca, traditional witchcraft, and things like powwow and stuff like that. So I did a lot of that. Then I kind of hit my mid-20s and I was like, I really need a foundation, because you read all these books and the thing that you get in every kind of like witchcraft book is this thing where it goes, take what you can use and discard everything else, which is grand and really, really helpful to a degree. But then you get to a point where you're just like, I've discarded so much that none of it meshes together. Yes. So I kind of got involved with OBOD because I found the course and then I got a tax rebate, which was the amount I needed for the bardic course. And I was like, that's obviously what I need to do then. So I did that. I've been part of their order for nearly, I think, 8 years. I think I said 8 years last time. Yes, it is, because I'm old. It's 8 years. And now I do that. I've been a member of ADF for 2 years because I needed to kind of branch out of OBOD a little bit. And yeah, I've been running the Goddess Grove, or it was the Grove of the White Goddess, for a couple of years now. But I was one of the elders, or another way of, no, I don't think I can put it another way, or one of the members that facilitated the group for a number of years previous to this last two. And yeah, that's kind of how I got into the kind of teaching role, because throughout like all of those years, I dipped my toes into lots and lots and lots of things, trying to find where I fit, and had knowledge to share with people in a like-minded group who were blank slates. So I kind of just facilitated that role because people asked questions and I had answers. So that was pretty much it. And it's kind of just stuck. So yeah, getting into the kind of teaching and sharing of information thing has kind of just been a rolling trend with me since the Grove of the White Goddess, and that's pretty much it. But yeah, that's the thing, that you tend to find that when you've got a surplus of information about a surplus of subjects, that you tend to be the teacher quite a lot, which is grand, but sometimes you want to learn something.
You want to be in that place of student or equal, not that hierarchy doesn't happen, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So that brings me to my next question, because in our conversation last week, you talked about how beforehand it was very regional, like it was really just for your group over there. You didn't really do anything online. And then when COVID happened, you saw the need for not only the necessary need to do stuff online, but there was a real vacuum that you saw around other pieces.
Yeah.
So the first, before we get into that other piece that I really want to ask you about, the first would be, you started putting stuff out online on the Goddess Grove website, on our Facebook group. You started regularly doing Sundays, and was it Mondays too?
It was just a Sunday live.
Yeah.
And then we had like a daily sort of divinatory spreads, and just to keep the page pumping out content. Because when it started, it was about getting people to see it, and getting people involved, because there's no point trying to provide for a community if the community don't see you. So trying to get the consistent pumping of content out. Yeah, but that was it really.
And the intention really was just for your group, and then suddenly it exploded. It was all over the place. And I know of groves and seed groups in the US here in Canada who have been sharing your stuff to their own private groups and have been really enjoying it.
Cool. Okay, that's cool. I never really
didn't know that.
How far it goes.
Are you surprised by the reaction? Because I've seen the comments. Like I've seen the comments on all the gay pagan groups and some of the other OBOD groups. Are you surprised by how big it's become? Yeah. Still surprised. So even surprised that you'd asked me on to be on a video on a podcast. Like it just doesn't cross my mind as to like like all of the other stuff really doesn't matter. The point of it was to provide for a community that needed something, and I've always been of the persuasion that if you see a need, you are
obliged, if you can do something, to do something. You know, the same as if you see an injustice, you are obliged, if you can stop it, to stop it. Otherwise, you become the bystander that's as bad as the person committing the offence. So it was just a case that I saw something the pagan community needed that we weren't getting, and I thought, well, I can do that. So I did. And then people were happy with it. You know, I just got in touch with a few friends who I knew had contacts and said, look, share this so we can get it out there and we'll see what happens. If nothing happens and I end up with just one viewer a week, then I don't care. I'll do it for them. But it seemed to just go a bit nuts. And I just was like, well, we'll just keep doing it then and see what happens. And so I did. And I still do. And I've got one this Sunday, actually. But yeah, we'll see what happens. But I never in a million years thought that it would attract any attention.
Right.
At all.
Right.
It was just for my friends in the group that had lost friends and were in need, and that was it. That's how it started.
That brings me to my, well, the other piece around that was, while you were putting out informational and teachings around, you know, like OAM and runes and plants and more practical things, there was also a memorial piece too. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, that is almost what started it. My other half is a funeral director. So I was acutely aware at the beginning of the pandemic how funerals were not taking place. Generally due to uncertainty about the virus and such, but they just were not taking place, and it left people stuck. Online, like video things, even in the funeral industry, was still relatively new or unused because most people go rather than try and connect. You know, so that took a massive up bump and got really involved in the funeral industry, like the online kind of watching it from afar. But I kind of realized as well, he's Catholic, and on Sundays there were names being read out, and I was like, these people are getting like not only a like they're missing their funerals, or people aren't able to go, but there seems to be this gap whereby the Catholics are doing it but we're not. You know, and there's all these religious groups like Hindus, Sikhs, they're still able to, you know, the priests are still doing their temple work. Even if no one's going, they're still doing the work. And I was like, there's no one, even if we can't go to a funeral, there's still no one who can say a name at the end of the week. And I was like, I'm going to do it. I'll just do that. And I had a ritual in my book of the thing that's massive, rituals and crap that I was like, I know I can do that. That will do. So I was like, I'm going to do it. And I was doing it weekly because it was a tandem. There were names every week. It was mad. And the first one went really well. And I was like, okay, that's good. A few initial viewers, generally it's around about the teens, just over between 10 and 13, but that's generally how many people in our group anyway that are consistent every time. So that was fine. But then I looked the next day and the first video had gone to like 1,200 views or something like that. It was well over 1,000, and I was like, what the hell? I've created a monster. And I was just like, okay, well, there's obviously a need then for the pagan community who are suffering like the rest of us to have an opportunity. It doesn't matter if the other person isn't pagan, because it's not necessarily for that. It's for honoring the departed. So I was like, we'll just keep doing it. So we've just kept on doing it. It's now monthly as opposed to weekly, but it's still happening. I don't think it will stop now, to be honest. I really have created a monster. An
inspirational monster too, right?
Well, I hope so. Inspiration's up to the Arwen.
Yeah, very much so. Well, and what you're speaking to is a problem I know that a lot of people in multiple communities have had, that idea of that disconnection from others, first of all, and that disconnection from self. I'm currently reading a book on the 2011 tsunami in Japan, and the spiritual response culturally to that process, the grief process. And with something like that, like, it's in your face, you can see the devastation around you. But with the coronavirus, where people are at home, you're not seeing the full impact. I don't think we're going to feel the full impact until we come out of this.
No, it's the ultimate epiphany of an invisible enemy.
Yes.
I think the only thing that even comes close in living memory might be comparable is probably the AIDS pandemic of the 1980s. You know, that was an invisible killer that targeted a specific community as opposed to everybody. But you know, the only other thing that was close was the Spanish flu, but no one's alive who went through that. You know,
no.
In living memory, the only thing I can think of that comes close is the AIDS pandemic, the AIDS epidemic. But it is a completely different thing, and it is just maddening and confusing. Has been the thing that has been most difficult about this is the confusion and misinformation that just populates everything you look at. So it's it's a time for focusing on the people around you rather than trying to broaden your horizons. You need to focus a bit more inward and a bit closer to home.
I totally agree. I completely agree. I would also expand that, and this is the next piece I want to ask you about. It's about making this less of a theoretical, cerebral kind of, you know, intellectual exercise, and about working with the pandemic, working with the spirits of the departed, working with the spirits who are coming in. And that's something you talked about last week, was one of the reasons that you ended up kind of branching out from OBOD to ADF and like exploring other pieces. Just before we started talking tonight, you're working through a book by Robin Artisan, for example.
Yeah.
Can you talk to me a little bit about that piece about working with spirits?
Yeah, so
come into your work now.
Yeah, so that was a lot of why I'm not Christian now, is because there's always been this sense of others about, and there's always something in my peripheral. 24/7, it's just become a thing that I ignore because it's there all the time. I have nobody around me who will testify, but my dad's house was probably the strangest and scariest house you could ever be in. However, I grew up there, which means I thought it was normal. If I go to a house that has no spiritual or like supernatural or weird stuff going on, I'm bored. I don't get it. I'm like, why is there nothing happening? So, you know, the whole reason I kind of stepped away from Christianity was because there was this underlying current that was, you do this and you ignore all of that. And I couldn't ignore all of that. And then I found the occult and all the rest of it, and Druidry, specifically ADF, where it's not ignore all of that, it's embrace all of that and acknowledge all of that, which is why I'm following Robin Artisan's work, because it is very much spirit-based spirit work. And you know, I had a lot of friends who were mediums in open-minded circles and things like that, and that's again not something I'm talking about either. It's very, very strange sort of stuff. So that was a real theme in like why I worked with OBOD and ADF and how I stepped in that direction. And it's also why I do a lot of work with I did take on this remembrance thing, was because I was doing ancestor work at the time as well, because of course there's all of those guys. There's in ADF there's the gods, there's the ancestors and the kindred, and it was important to acknowledge them. So I was like, okay, we need to do that then, and that kind of became part and parcel of my practice then. It was kind of an excuse almost to engage that part of my practice by providing it for the community. Yeah, I've gone off on a tangent now.
No, it's not a tangent, not at all. No.
I can't remember what point I was trying to make. But yeah.
Like you were talking about, so you wanted to bring it into your practice because you found that it wasn't a focus in OBOD, not necessarily in the grade that you were in, but there's also that piece about how, your experiences when you were younger, growing up in the house that you did, especially when your father passed away, having that element in your life suddenly. There was that need to really start to focus on, okay, well, I see the spirit over here, I'm going to work with them, or I'm going to tend to them or placate them or whatever.
Yes. More on that is, it was quite a big deal when my dad died because I was his primary carer for about 10 years. He died in the end of kidney failure, but he had the kidney failure for a long time. We say we were ready for it because we were ready for it. It wasn't a shock. It wasn't unexpected. It was expected, but that doesn't mean that necessarily it's any easier. However, I kind of got the book thrown at me because at the same time that I was his primary carer, his death meant then that I lost my income. I then lost my home, and I kind of lost my dad all within the space of 24 hours. It was a bit much. And it took a really long time to kind of then get settled, get sorted, and then embrace that ancestral work. So all of this has been a massive like learning curve and a massive like engagement really of how I've really got to like deal with those things. Although I was over the initial aspects of it, there are parts in the Ovate course that I'm currently going through that I still haven't done because at the time I was going through those motions, and you can't necessarily access those thoughts or modes of the mind when they are emotionally wrought. And so it's important to engage them when you're at a point when you're ready for them, which is now, really. If it wasn't for the fact that the pandemic had made everything difficult, I can't even go to the blooming shop, I would have probably gotten through these things by now and done these Ovate things. Not that I'm doing a great deal, but you're very much distracted, so I just haven't got around to it yet. But yeah, my dad's death really forced me and kind of forced my hand, and I really had to kind of move with it. There wasn't any excuses, wasn't anything really. My dad died in the early summer, and it wasn't until the following winter that I really kind of acknowledged what had happened. It took that long because there was so much to do. Finding somewhere to live kind of took priority. Absolutely. But it really influenced my practice, and spirit work was very, very important. And I'd never done any ancestor work until now. I have him, and I have a little, I don't know if I can show you. No, I can't because it's not there. Oh, yes, I can. No, it's just here. My great-grandmother as well had this little like oil lamp.
Beautiful.
So I kind of invite her. I haven't had any oil for ages because nowhere's open. So I haven't been able to buy any. But I always invite her whenever I do anything. And she was strict Christian. She'd probably hate all this, but I don't care. It's tough. Gran, you're coming in. Have a cup of tea.
Yeah. Well, but this raises a good point. You go, like we were talking about relationship before, and we were talking about need. Your family is your family is your family. That's what I've like ancestral work is one of my major deep dives. It's something that I bring into my practice all the time. And even though, it's just like going and seeing your family now. They may disagree with something you're doing, but you're still welcome at the table, hopefully.
Yeah. I am definitely the only rainbow sheep. I am the I don't really, I grew up with a massive extended family, and then coming out as gay and coming out as being somebody in the craft, because there's a lot of people don't realize that there's more than one closet in the world, and that us gay people don't have the monopoly on closets. There's more than one. And coming out as gay was one thing, but then it was really, really funny. I started being more public with my occult practice and got invited with my current boyfriend to a dinner with an uncle and aunt. And I was like, oh, this is lovely. This has never happened before. My family's never invited me and my partner. And I was like, oh, this is great. Unbeknownst to me, it was a little bit of an intervention, and they wanted to know about my new religion. The new religion I'd been practicing for a decade, but they ignored. So I was just like, But suffice it to say, a lot of my family, I'm kind of estranged from, just because it's for lack of a better term, easier this way, and it just avoids the arguments that were not easy when, you know, at the same time as my dad dying and me being homeless, my faith, which was the only thing underpinning my everyday, was being questioned and belittled, and I was just like, I can't do that as well. So yeah, it's although I invite ancestors, I am very aware of that relationship. And like you mentioned relationships, it doesn't mean then that the ancestors aren't going to agree with you. My grand said something to me really that's always stuck in my head, and my dad repeated the sentiment before he died. And she said before she died, you are a good boy, you don't look at the world like other people. And that was it. And it stuck in my brain because I was like, what the hell does that mean?
A very British way of saying something too.
Yeah, like, you don't look at the world like other people. What? Hang on, am I colourblind and didn't realise what's going on, Gran? But it wasn't until she died, and then my dad said the same thing, and then he died, that I was like, actually, I don't see the world like other people, because I was seeing how other people were reacting to their passing and how I didn't.
Right.
Because I still had them.
Yes.
Because of all of this stuff that those people had told me to ignore through all of those years, I could still see it. Yeah. It was still there. And in all amongst that was Dad and Gran.
Yes.
It's really strange how the world kind of works. And although I know she's full-on Christian and would never agree with any of this stuff, I think she appreciates the invite every now and again just to hang out.
Just to come and just to come and have a cup of tea. Yeah.
Just to come and chill.
Yeah. It's very true what you say. I think that it's a very Western Judeo-Christian kind of understanding of the dead, is that they're over there, they're gone, they're not here. It's how we even talk about it in English. We talk, as soon as somebody we know has died, we suddenly put them into a place of past tense. They liked this, they liked that. They're somewhere else. That's not a norm in the rest of the world. No, not at all. I was reading this book a few days ago, and he encapsulated perfectly in animistic in Japanese tradition. Death is not seen as an end, but a variation of life.
Yes. Yeah. And it's really strange, because what people think of as really old-fashioned, that like it's an old-fashioned English thing about death, it really isn't.
No.
We had completely different death customs only in Victorian England, which wasn't actually that long ago.
No,
and we did everything so differently. Like, I can't take death photography now. It doesn't happen. But it was only Victorian England that we did that sort of stuff. We propped them up on rods and dressed them in their finest gear, you know? Yeah. So to think that we've changed so much in such a short amount of time and like alienated ourselves from this very visceral thing. A friend of mine, you know, of course, Christopher Hughes, he's what's he called?
Mortuary attendant, wasn't it? Coroner's attendant?
Yeah, but there's a word for it. It's a very sciencey word, and I'm going to butcher it by trying to say it. But he figures out why people die. And he describes himself when he's doing talks as a visceral insulator. because he insulates the rest of us from what is very visceral with regards to death.
Yes.
I find that really fascinating because we never had that. You didn't have that in Victorian England. And then all of a sudden it was taken off us.
It was. The funeral industry came in, and we, somebody dies in our house, or somebody dies, they're taken away. Next time we see them, they're either in an urn or they're backlit with beautiful makeup on, and,
Yep.
we don't have that same connection, right?
We started outsourcing.
Yes.
That's it. Bish, bash, bosh.
Yeah. And we don't even have the dead in the house anymore. Like around the world, most of the traditions I've looked at, the dead are still in the home. Whether you have a shrine to them or you have them literally in the home somehow, we've removed over the past 80 years. Yeah. Yeah. It's
really strange. Really, really strange. Which I think is why a lot of ancestor work is coming back.
Yes.
And why I think it's very, very important. I was absolutely gutted last Samhain to not be able to do the annual dumb supper that me and my friends would do, and it is like the nicest, most moving piece of ancestor work that you could do, and also probably the funniest dinner you will ever have.
I love it. No, my supervisor over here, she has a dumb supper every Samhain.
Oh, they're brilliant.
I didn't really know my granddad. My granddad was from Manchester. Didn't really know him because he died a little very early in my life. But from what I had heard from various people in my life, he was a complete arsehole to my dad. He was one of these people. Perfection, perfect. So I sat down with him and said, "Granddad, why did you treat my dad like this?" And he said, "You have to understand. I didn't know what I know now." Right?
Yeah.
And then he ended the conversation by saying, "You need to bring that cake back because it's very good. I want more of it."
Yeah.
But that's the thing that people don't realize with ancestor veneration when they're still like just getting into it, is that the conversation, the relationship can continue, right?
Yeah, it's really strange. Just so it's a term that I've really, really kind of latched onto is people moving into fairy, which kind of confuses a lot of people, but I like it because there's this general idea that the world of fairy is just the world of other, which means that anybody can become other. Just other than what you are, other than where you are, other than what is now. And that's what happens to the dead. So they move into fairy, they become other than what they were before. But that doesn't change very much of who they are or what they are. They just exist in this otherness. And the work I've been doing is accessing that otherness. And it's been massively eye-opening, absolutely massively. It's been great fun. And something that I've really kind of developed in this past kind of nearly 2 years because of the pandemic. But it's been grand. It's been really, really grand. It's nice. It's nice to talk about it. Really, really nice.
Let me ask you a question on that then. When it came to you building your memorial and your weekly practice and now monthly practice, is there a sense from those who have departed of how that relationship continues for them? Do you get a sense from those other people in that place of other what that piece is like for them?
Yeah, so I don't generally get, so like you mentioned just now, the kind of audible, almost audible two-way conversation kind of thing. I rarely, very, very rarely get that, although I may appear intuitive. It's not, it doesn't ever really work that way for me. More often than not, I get in things that you would have to interpret. And I tend to find that when I'm doing things like that, and especially during the Rite of Remembrance, that you know, I'll get messages, or I'll get comments from people saying this happened, that happened. I got a clear sense of this, that, and the other. Whereas for me, like for example, one video, I think it's still on the Grove actually, where I read out my letter to my dad and then burnt it, and I cannot tell you, like, the amount of smoke that came from. I couldn't see the screen, I couldn't see anything, and we got the Hagalaz rune, which was probably the only one I'm really rubbish at interpreting. And I was like, it's because I read your letter, isn't it? It's because I read it out loud to like loads of people who are now just listening to a message that was meant to just be for you, and you're a bit miffed. And I was like, okay. And it was kind of just like, I had to look back at it to realize what my dad was trying to get across to me. And the same with my gran almost, you know, I never get anything than, you know, somebody will say something that's a little bit out of character, but would have been perfect for gran, you know, and I'll be like, why did you say that? I don't know, just popped into my head. I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right then. So it always comes in different ways for myself. But yeah, like there is always an engagement from that place of otherness that never goes away, never, ever, ever. But I think I thrive on it, so that's fine.
Well, and sometimes we don't even know. While you were talking about that, I remember I was just contemplating like how we tend to be used by that place of other in ways that are mysterious and weird, you know, WYRD. I remember, so one of the dumb suppers I was going to, I was working in a small bakery, and I was choosing something to take to this as an offering, right? And this place is all apple pies, mostly apple pies, you know, cherry pies. It's all pies, right? But they also have something called butter tarts, which are like, I don't know if you get them over there. They're like custard creams, but instead of custard cream inside, it's like caramel butter, basically. Really, really tasty, really good. If you come to North America, you need to try these.
Oh my God.
Imagine, they're amazing. You can only have one because they're so, think Bakewell tarts, but like caramel inside. So
okay, challenge accepted. I'll try some.
So I picked these up, and it was different from what I was going to choose. So I go and I'm chatting with my supervisor who was organizing it, and there was somebody else there, and I picked these up and I said, oh, you know, these are for you, these are for tonight, and she bursts into tears, and I said, oh, I know that they're 50% off, but like they're still good, like, you know. No, you don't get it. She had done one earlier in the day, and her mum had come. And she was really hoping that her dad would come tonight. And one of the major things that was a huge thing for his life, because he was from an area of Ontario where butter tarts were important, was butter tarts.
That's awesome.
Right. And so as soon as she saw that, she got the message that, yes, he will be there tonight. You know, now I had never met this individual before, and I had no idea what this was, but like, you know, in the moment, a few hours before I drove up, it was oh no, I'll take these butter tarts, you know, not because they're 50% off and I'm cheap, you know.
No, because they're damn nice.
Because they're so delicious.
Why would you think?
But
purely selfish. I like
found that.
Say again, sorry.
I said, but I found that in my own life. It's like when they want to send a message, it will come in all sorts of ways. You may not even know afterwards you're placing that.
No.
Yeah.
I was so one of my patrons, one of my patron deities is Dionysus, and one of the things that was made very apparent right at the beginning is that it's going to happen whether you like it or whether you don't. And Dionysus is very much, you know, wine and sponge cake. And by the way, there's an orgy around the corner. Oh, and if nobody's fucked things up yet, I'm about to. And I'm kind of I had an instance where we'd done me and a group of people had done ritual for a couple of hours. We'd had a couple of hours of ritual and and learning and things. And I was at that point studying Thelema and quite ceremonial magic, and Dionysus gelled in quite well with that, which was quite cool. And we moved then to the pub afterwards to discuss what we'd all gone through and what we had been doing. And I had 2 glasses of red wine, and then I poured a third, ordered a fourth, poured the fourth, dedicated it to him, and drank the third, and gave that fourth to him whilst I was drinking, right? And said, you can have that whilst I'm drinking this one, and I'll finish it off for you when we're done. And I have no idea what happened next, but apparently all hell broke loose, and there was arguments and debauchery and all manner of things, people having breakdowns and everything. And apparently in the corner I'd found a nice soft chair, and I was sat there with my arms folded with a massive grin on my face, just reclining. And I was like, I don't remember anything. And one of my mates at the time went, did you invite somebody? And I was like, maybe. Instantly I was like, shit, what have I done? But yeah, they work whether you want them to or not. I just wanted to share a drink with him because I thought it was appropriate. And I was like, thank you very much for being at my ritual today. Have a glass of wine. And he was like, and I'm going to, raise hell because I can. Everybody else got affected by this raising of the hell. And I just sat and watched, apparently. It's just mad. But yeah, there's a really interesting line in LaVey's, is it LaVey? Anton LaVey's Satanism, where there's like the precepts or the laws of Satanism. And one of them is to never deny the existence and effects of magic, lest you lose everything you gained through them.
Yeah.
And it's like, I've never heard anything truer because you can't deny it. Otherwise it's like, what's the point?
Yeah. Well, and you block that off. And when you block something off, it's going to, like water, seep in somewhere.
Yeah, of course.
It really is, yeah.
Of course.
It reminds me of something that Philip Cargom was talking about with his group when he was in Ireland. He went, I cannot remember the names of these people, but when he was much younger, he hung out for a couple of years with this group of people.
It's Fellowship of Isis, wasn't it?
Yes, Fellowship of Isis. Thank you so much.
That's it.
And how, when something unexplainable happens, don't explain it away, just accept the unexplainable.
Yeah, the reversed Occam's razor.
Yes, that's it. Yes.
Yeah, because the Occam's razor principle is that everything has a very straightforward, rational, and easy to find solution. The reverse Occam's razor is that you don't look for the easy one. You try and come up with the most fantastical and magical one you can think of. I love it. I've been doing it ever since I heard of it. And yes, Olivia Colman and the Fellowship of Isis. Yeah, that's how they lived in the house.
How often do people, just in their regular life, in their spiritual life, in their regular job, in their approach to death, whatever it is, always goes to that rational explanation over the scent of the cologne that my great-grandfather or grandfather used to wear? Oh, it's not, I'm just imagining this, blah blah blah, whatever, right? I'm not hearing my dead dog bark, it's just the wind or something. We go into
I've always said to people, back to the kind of the teaching thing, like if I was ever doing something specific that was either meditation, or it was like energy work, or it was something to do with wands, or you were doing something where you were trying to work on divination or communication. I mean, crystalmancy, like having a crystal ball there. I'm crap at it. I've been able to do it, but I'm really bad at it. It doesn't mean I don't know the technical things to which to guide other people to find out that. But as an introduction, I can do an introductory thing. And you'd be surprised how many people would turn around and go, oh, I felt this, but I knew it was that. And I'm like, oh, like, don't ignore or explain away the physical reactions that are the communications you're receiving. Just because it was a physical thing and you can explain it doesn't mean that it wasn't tied to what you were doing.
Right.
I had a cold chill, but there was a breeze. Yeah, And he might have been across the garden going, to give you that breeze. You have no idea. Don't explain it away just because you think you can be rational about it. Like, acknowledge it. Don't think of everything as a sign, but certainly don't explain everything away. Otherwise, you leave yourself with nothing at all to appreciate in a magical sense.
Absolutely.
And it's defeating yourself.
Absolutely. Well, and how many other areas of life is that applicable to? I would say pretty much all of them.
Yeah.
I would say pretty much all of them. If we don't have that sense of magic in our lives, then where's inspiration? Where is creativity? Where is imagination? Where is drive to continue onwards? Because, I mean, if
exactly.
life is just, if life is so explainable to a point where you don't have any kind of interaction with it, then we might as well just go and jump in a lake somewhere, right?
Yeah. It's that old adage, isn't it, that or that old kind of argument that science is responsible for the decline of spirituality, religion, and all the rest of it. But science, by definition, is observation.
Mm-hmm.
That's all science is. And everything that can be observed through you is valid. So just because you can explain something doesn't mean that its experience, the experience of a thing, is less spiritual or religious because you can explain it.
Exactly.
It doesn't matter.
Exactly.
It's the fact that you experienced it and you can tie the two things together. That's what the difference between mundane and magical is.
Mm-hmm. Very much so. And anything mundane can be magical if taken in with that idea. Yeah.
Generally speaking, I don't use the term mundane very often because I don't think there's a point. But yes, no.
I hear what, and don't take me what I said that way. I hear what you're saying. But it is, people get I find this in my counseling practice. People get into this sense of, what would the neighbors think? What would, judgment. If it's not coming from outside, it's coming from inside. Well, that's not really what happened, blah, blah, blah. And they shut themselves down. And I'm guilty of this myself. I think everybody is, because we're so socialized to be that way, right? Yeah. So final question for you, Clint.
Yeah, it's kind of that compartmentalizing, isn't it?
It is that compartmentalization. It is. And when you look at other systems around the world, and other cultures around the world, that compartmentalization doesn't exist as much, right?
Not as much. No. It's the age of enlightenment, isn't it?
Lovely Descartes. Yeah, I love him. So last question for you. After this past year and everything that you've done, everything, all the people you've been meeting and all the areas that you've been going into, what have you learned about yourself?
I've learned a lot, actually. I've had time to think about this question since last time you asked me, actually. And it's something that has kind of awoken an inner monologue lately, because I always kind of made a point of growing up. I've always kind of made a point of being nice and I live by the adage, you catch more flies with honey than you do with vinegar. I work in retail as management, so only store management. So you kind of have to work that angle to get anywhere. But the thing I've learned is that something I say in my videos is something you have to live by if you're going to say it, is that kindness is the easiest form of magic. And it is probably the most potent thing. I said last time about the Lord of the Rings, and that Gandalf and is it Saruman having a conversation about keeping evil at bay, and Saruman thinks it's done by great power, that you have to match power for power, and Gandalf thinks no, actually, rather than doing that, you can keep evil at bay by concentrating on the small acts. And it is so true. A house is built of millions of bricks, but you only have to take one layer of bricks away and the house comes crumbling down.
Absolutely.
And it just, so in the same respect, everything can be made better with just small, simple, one-off acts of just kindness to the rest of the world. It doesn't matter. And it doesn't have to be grand or grandiose or big of you or anything. It can just be the case that you make a point of saying something nice before you say goodbye every time you say goodbye, and that's it. That's what I've learned, is that you've got to actually talk the talk and walk the walk. So when you say be kind every day, then do it.
That's beautiful. Thank you.
That's all right.
No,
Tis life. Tis what we do.
it is. Well, and demonstrated by your rite of remembrance. You started with 13 people, 14 people, and then a couple of weeks later, it was 1,200 people. You know?
Yeah, mad.
Yeah.
Mad. I don't think I've had one that successful since, but I generally don't check. I'm not very good with technology, so I generally just do it, send it, share it as much as I can, and do what I can with it, and then just wait and see what happens. But yeah, I often get messages and stuff. They're the bits I wait for. If somebody reaches out, then I know that I've been heard. But they're reaching out because they're feeling something, and the acknowledgement sometimes is all they need.
Right. Thank you so much. This has been a wonderful chat, and I hope to have you on again. Absolutely, no, and I would definitely hope that you'll come and join us again sometime.
Oh, anytime, Ben. It's been absolutely wonderful, and I'm again flattered and honoured that you invited me. So thank you very, very, very much for giving me your time.
Absolutely. Well, I love your stuff. I love the fact that you put it out there. I will put all the details down in the show notes. And for viewers, if you're interested in learning more about the Goddess Grove and what Clint has been doing with his life, there was talk of a blog. You were talking about a blog at some point?
At some point there may be a blog, but at the moment I'm just on Facebook and on Instagram. But generally speaking, Facebook is at the Goddess Grovies, and my Instagram whatever is at Clint Sky Guy. So you can find pretty much everything on there between the two. And I'm always doing something. And magic has become kind of my life. It's a bit mad, but yeah.
Walking your talk.
Yeah, exactly. Do it.
Right. Yeah.
That's it.
Thank you so much. Thank you.